Well, good morning, everybody. As you start off this Tuesday here, I just want to apologize. I can't turn off the air handling in my hotel room, so that's that noise in the background here. But what I'll be watching across the country today are three things. The first thing is look at the size of this low that's way off the coast here, deep low that's kind of spinning here in the North Atlantic, just very quite picturesque there. But the second piece, as the sun was rising here across the United States, is actually the shortwave that's coming out of New Mexico into Texas. That's going to be the first of two systems that kind of dives through the Red River Valley of the South and then moves towards parts of the Great Lakes. Oh, it finally just shut off on its own. So, gosh, I guess I poked enough buttons on the thermostat. Anyway, the last thing I want to talk about is how the systems coming into the west for the next several days are going to be coming in again around that split flow, the ridge in the Gulf of Alaska, and the trajectory kind of digs those troughs in like this. We need to talk about what that means in terms of precipitation for the west, because overall, the next 7 days are probably going to see a significant improvement in the topsoil moisture across much of the central and eastern Corn Belt into like Ontario and New England, while the issues we've kind of seen with the long-standing drier conditions since January 17th for the west are going to continue into the near term. So I have been showing you that map that looks down at 40 centimeters at soil moisture. This one's only down, 40 inches in soil moisture. This one's only the 4-inch one. So again, we're going to be watching for a lot of change in this particular area. And that's because the jet stream's doing this, all right? So throughout much of this week, the flow's coming in, it kind of bumps up into a ridge that keeps developing here. So systems dive into the west this direction and eject as short waves here, and then run around this subtropical ridge just up toward the eastern Great Lakes. And as a result, the next two of these systems that are going to do that give us this 10-day precipitation anomaly forecast. What we want to do is figure out how much of this is going to be rain and how much of it's going to be snow. And we're going to talk at the end about when we could possibly see the shift in the pattern coming back around to deliver better moisture for the whole of the Pacific Northwest down into California and the Intermountain West. Now, in today's report, I show the latest snowwater equivalent maps and talk about the upper Colorado Basin. So if you get a chance to read that, please do. We also do kind of more of a dive into La Nina and its fade from some of the world's global weather forecasting agencies. So please take a look at that. But right now in the near term, I want to see what's going to happen with these next few systems diving into the country. So we're going to pick up here with the 0Z high-resolution European model. So early this morning, the low over the Hudson Bay is connected along this pressure trough down to the shortwave coming out of New Mexico. And so as that low tries to clear into Ontario and Quebec, the leading front right in through here is going to serve as the kind of the track for the next low that's coming out, here it is, of the Red River Valley by the time we get into Wednesday. Again, there is the risk as we go through the evening on Wednesday for isolated severe storms down here in the lower Mississippi River Valley. And that system is going to go right through, as you see here, on Wednesday into Thursday toward the Great Lakes. Now you notice that on the back side, the models continue to put down snow here, and there's a kicker wave on the back of this that could deliver some snow throughout parts of the plains, although not very much overall. So that's system number one. Its front clears the Carolinas through the Mid-Atlantic and New England, while possibly delivering some stronger storms across parts of the southeast on Thursday night. That's the one that spreads snow into Ontario and Quebec, but really limits how much snow will be falling in the interior of like New England. Here's the kicker wave on the back side. Now, while that one moves out late this week, the next one comes into the Pacific Northwest. And can you see, as I just kind of move this quickly over Friday into Saturday, the systems are diving across the country in this direction. So what that's going to do is it's going to send a pretty deep wave down here all the way into Mexico that will eject later on, like early next week on Monday into Tuesday as a system here. So that one follows almost a similar trajectory. See it? But there's going to be a bit of a change getting past mid-month, and that will be how cold the air becomes with this deeper trough that's developing throughout the western United States. So we now see more snow throughout the Colorado Rockies getting up into the northern Rockies. We see snow coming into the Sierra Nevada, adding to some decent snowpack they picked up over the last couple of days. But there's a lot of mild air out ahead of this, primarily due to high pressure sitting here. But again, this is a type of setup that gives us a risk of severe storms throughout the lower Mississippi River Valley. So that's it. That's maybe what I'm seeing over the next 8 days or so in terms of this pattern. It's kind of following this prescribed, way of diving in and then checking straight up here toward, the Great Lakes with these next two systems. So there's some snow coming into the Midwest, and in today's report, I link all of the maps for the West and the Northeast so you can see other regions. But just thinking about an area that's in a bit of a snow deficit, to be able to see some snow coming into this part of Missouri, getting into parts of Iowa and Wisconsin. Now, we won't really rely on the amounts just yet, but this is right now where we're thinking the heaviest snow swath could be with this next system. Bigger picture on the snow, this is a map showing the probability of getting at least 3 inches. So again, we're seeing a higher probability in this area, but the snowiest regions kind of follow right into this part of the northern Canadian prairie. And as each of these systems matures, it goes into Ontario and Quebec. The snow that's out in the west, these amounts are not heavy. The heaviest will be up in British Columbia and parts of the northern Cascades. It won't be until we get fully out there past day 8 or 9 that we start to see better chances of snow in the Rockies and maybe into the Sierra Nevada as well. So the precipitation totals here, in other words, looking at the probability of at least getting an inch, they're very, very high in through this part of the country. So this is the chance of getting an inch over the next 10 days, but I'd like to step this up for you and show you the chances of getting at least 2 inches. And you're also going to see the chance of getting 4 inches, very, very wet, coming out of eastern Texas, eastern Oklahoma, Arkansas, and southern Missouri with this next few systems rolling through. Now, the temperature pattern is very much like we've been describing. There's a lot of mild air through the middle of the month if you're east of the Rocky Mountains, including the Canadian Prairie. And the colder air might not return until after we get past like the 17th, 18th, 19th. And during that time period, we're watching an overall shift in the Pacific that may encourage some colder air to come across much of North America. If there's a spot that stays cold throughout much of this time period, other than like Alaska, Greenland, and the Canadian archipelago, it's the Intermountain West, and we see a colder bias in parts of California as well with this pattern. But I believe the end of this month and the start of March could see a very different pattern overall, because that's when the MJO is expected to come out of the Indian Ocean and kind of set up residence here in the Western Pacific for a while. And why we're really watching that carefully is because if the models have this right and we make a big transition here, that means that this forecast for late February to mid-March will likely not verify for California. We'll probably see better precipitation than being forecasted here. Same thing for the southern plains as well. That would invigorate more of a subtropical or at least a zonal component of the jet, which helps these two areas with better precipitation. I do agree, though, as we talked about in last night's in-depth forecast, with the wetter conditions east of the Mississippi here in the overall forecast by the European model through mid-March. Okay, lastly, just a quick trip to South America. Just did some the newest NDVI analysis for Cordoba, Santa Fe, Entre Rios, and Buenos Aires, just to show again how the NDVI values have been really coming up. And also wanted to point out that much of Brazil's NDVI values are still at the top of the 20-year average, and this is something we're thinking about for the size of this crop, despite some of the slow harvest progress that's been going on here due to how green and wet it's been. So speaking of how wet it's been, take a look at this. This is the next 10 days of total accumulated precip. Now, much of the next 10 days, very wet in central Brazil, near normal monsoonal rains north, but drier in northeast. But not very much precipitation until you get past Saturday and Sunday. We see early next week, if I kind of rock back and forth over Monday, Sunday, Monday here into Tuesday, that's when the better storms are expected to come into Argentina. It's been consistent in the forecast, but one important thing to understand is that until then, we still have at least 2 more days of high temperatures above 40 C. That's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in much of north central Argentina. So just something to watch out in terms of some risk there. Okay, I'll look forward to talking to you in the morning. Until then, have a good rest of your day. Thanks.